Hey friends, this is Eric the Mind Control Guy. How's everybody doing today? Well, I'm a day off and I gotta go do a little bit of work outside here in a little while. This weekend we're having a driveway poured. So I gotta go out and do some work. But anyway, the reason I'm making this particular video, uh, we've heard off and on for years about the potential of the great gun grab. So what's a great gun grab? Well, they talk about various agencies basically coming into your home, kicking in doors, taking your firearms at gunpoint. And a book that the left absolutely hates and other people hate, well, hate it all day long. That doesn't mean it's not true or could be possibly true. The book is the Turner Diaries, written in 1978, and it talks about the great gun grab and a whole bunch of other stuff that goes on, and then kind of goes off into wild uh, a wild cleansing, let's just say. But anyway, the first part, the great gun grab, where it talked about that in 1978. So you figure that's been like 43 years ago. And people say, oh, the great gun grab, that could never happen. Really? Let me show you something. This book right here, The Great Gun, or it's called The Great New Orleans Gun Grab, Descent into Anarchy. This actually happened back during, or right after Hurricane Katrina. There is video footage still today on YouTube where it shows various law enforcement agencies taking people's firearms at gunpoint. The chief of police is saying on camera, no one will be allowed to be armed. We will take all weapons. And they did. They took people's weapons at gunpoint, pounding on the doors. One little old lady looked no bigger than a bar of soap after a hard day's washing. And they asked her if she had any guns. You got any guns? She had an old little 38 revolver, unloaded. She had it in her hands like this. She just showed it to him. Some guy, probably 3 to 4 times her size, made about 2 of me. And I'm a little over 6 foot tall and about 280. This guy was huge. Took her down to the ground, about beat her face in. Tough, real tough. Took people's firearms at gunpoint, even on the bay, or on the bayou, whatever they call it down there. Boat patrol. Approaching people's boats, lock and load on them. You got any guns? Where are they at? Took their guns at gunpoint. A few people got them back. Most people never did. And some people got their guns back. Their guns were so rusty, they were just ruined. And for those that don't believe it can't happen, it can, and it already has. Now, I have showed you a number of times this particular movie series. Came out in 1986, 12 hours long. It's called America, spelled with a K. And it was supposed to be portrayed 10 years after Soviet occupation. That's what it was. It was made during the Cold War. I was in the service when it happened. I kept telling you about a book by the same name that I found on Amazon. And every time I make a video, I never had the book with me. Well, today I do. That's a book It's by the same name. It's the exact same story. And anyway, they have something in this book that they did not have in that movie. And what that was it talks about an EMP. How'd the Soviets get over here? Not challenged. Well, 4 huge bombs were exploded over the continental United States, wiped out the grid. And that's how they were able to come in. Matter of fact, why don't I read it to you? Why don't I read that part to you? Let me find it. In the history of human folly, arrogant fantasies of military supremacy and pathetic illusions of national safety have played a crucial role. The Great Wall of China, Spanish Armada, the Maginot Line, all were thought to be impregnable. All fell, and with them fell not only governments but ideas, not only nations, but those unique aspects of the human spirit that were embodied in each conquered civilization. Through most of the 1980s, the United States of America had regarded itself and was regarded by the rest of the world as the mightiest and therefore most secure nation the world had ever seen. It seemed to dawn on no one that those two notions did not necessarily go hand in hand. The American defense system represented the perfection's combination of America's skill and American will, of vast wealth and limitless ingenuity, applied to the problems of survival for this hardiest of peoples. In fact, the U.S. military had evolved the most sophisticated weaponry and communications networks ever known to man. With that sophistication, however, came a vast complexity, and with that complexity came danger. The taller a building gets, the more it sways in the wind. The longer a bridge, the less it takes to send the whole span crashing. So it was with the American system of defense. Paradoxically, as the system grew more powerful, it grew more fragile. As it took on more and more weight and bulk, it came ever closer to teetering. Some few men and women, both inside the government and out, were aware of this. As in ages past, their voices were not heard. Don't we see that every day? And we have seen it for many years. As these voices of caution were ignored in Washington, however, voices of opportunity were listened to closely in Moscow. In the waning days of the 1980s, the leaders of the Soviet Union, beset by paralyzing economic woes and growing domestic unrest, had less to lose than to gain by gambling on a massive rearrangement of the balance of power in the world. Without warning, on a quiet Tuesday morning, the Russians took the headiest gamble in the history of warfare by launching a nuclear attack against America. But this attack was no storybook Armageddon of mushroom clouds bursting over cities, of scalded millions murdered in their homes. This was a new sort of war, conceived in shocking simplicity by Soviet scientists. The premises: don't attack targets. Attacking targets, after all, even with nuclear missiles, was essentially as primitive as throwing stones. What mattered was not the individual base and silos, but rather the electronic network that linked them as an effective whole. The key then was to attack and disable the communication systems among the target, therefore by crippling the entire system. Hmm. How many times have we heard about that in recent years? Take down the grid and the whole thing falls. Remember, this book was written in 1986. High in the stratosphere above America, four enormous nuclear devices were detonated. On Earth, the explosions were heard only as a low rumble. No one was hurt by the blast, nor did they generate a dangerous amount of fallout. No one even felt the concussive power of the bombs. I'd say concussion, I don't know how that's said. But the explosions were felt by every computer circuit, every telephone line, every banking system, every electronic plant from Maine to San Diego. The detonations created a vast electromagnetic pulse. EMP says it right there on page 3, the first paragraph. The detonations created a vast electromagnetic pulse, EMP, that was like 100,000 bursts of lightning focused insidiously on America's nervous system. Vast stores of computer memory were instantly erased. The coils of electronic generators sizzled and seized. Telephones were dead. The age of communications ended in a millisecond, and with it ended America's military, political, and economic hegemony. The conquest of America incredibly had been effective without taking a single life. American missiles stood unharmed in their silos, but could not be activated. Around the world, American forces, their ranks undiminished, were at the ready, but could not issue orders. In Washington, the American president was given an agonizing and humiliating choice: surrender and agree to unilateral disarmament, the virtual destruction of the dollar, and the essential end of national sovereignty, or resist. Fight back with whatever sundered forces could be mustered, and face certain annihilation. This choice was not a choice at all for a leader who valued human life. With dizzying, incomprehensible suddenness of the United States of America was under the thrall of the Russians. With Soviet rule came a dizzy torrent of euphemisms and doublespeak. The conquest, by far the most cataclysmic and humiliating event in all of American history, was dubbed the transition. Haven't we been hearing something about that? The transition? Obama, Biden, transition. As in the shift from capitalism and freedom to communism and subjugation was indeed an inevitable progression. Thousands of loyal citizens were redefined as subversives and forced to leave the cities where, in concentration, they could be troublesome to the new authorities. They were called exiles, and it was true that their homeland had abandoned them, kind of like the VA does to veterans. The most committed of the exiles became resistors, guerrilla fighters, who endured the most crushing hardships and dangers in the name of those values that only yesterday had been the norm. Under the system of the conquerors, logic was stood on its head and language itself was recruited into the service of erasing history. Erasing history. Isn't that what Antifa and Black Lives Matter and all those other Marxist leftist organizations have been doing for the last 5 years now? 4 to 5 years? erasing history, tearing down our statues, vandalizing all our monuments, completely unmolested. Cops are told to stand back and let them do whatever the hell they want. Who the hell's giving those orders? Who the hell's giving those orders? Is it by the communists that Joe McCarthy warned us about, who slither their way into these positions of authority and making policy, and now they are mayors and governors and elected members of Senate and the Congress, and right now I dare say the President of the United States? Got their way into the military making policy, and now they run things? The very people that Joe McCarthy warned us about? Are those the people who are telling the cops, hands off, don't touch them? But who were these Soviets who were now America's administrators, overseers, and bosses? Oddly, they did not conform at all closely to our hysterical Cold War images of them. They were not beetle-browed commissars, nor were they blustering bores who swilled vodka and spouted rigid ideological platitudes. They were modern men and women, cultured, pragmatic, efficient, very often charming, and generally humane. They had humor. They had desires. They had a vision. Their vision was of a world united and running as a single mechanism according to the precepts of Marx and Lenin. All the Marxist professors, admitted Marxist professors and teachers in our schools from kindergarten to the senior universities. To each according to his need, from each according to his ability. On its face, the prescription was benign enough. Could any thinking person claim that the rhetoric was less dignified or lofty or even essential different than the thrilling pronouncements of Jefferson and Lincoln on which American Republic had been based? The Soviets came not to conquer by force, but to win a moral total victory by imposing an alternate mythology. They were offering peace. It was a sort of peace that the great majority of Americans, all those who wanted nothing more from their time on earth than to preserve some fraction of the security and comfort they'd known before, accept with appalling ease. It was sort of a peace against which some few Americans, keeping alive the spark of freedom in its armor of defiance, vowed to wage the most intimate and sacred form of battle. This is the story of three men, each of whom fought for his vision of what new America might become. Devin Milford, which in the movie is played by Chris Christopherson. Once a candidate for president, now stigmatized as a criminal, was the defiant one. A man who insisted that the real world of politics and power conformed to his ideal of the United America. Peter Bradford was the pragmatic one, an honest man committed to the principle of compromise and to practical approaches to problems that could not really be solved. Andrei Denisov was a complex one, the enemy and not the enemy, the KGB colonel who harbored a love for America that the Americans themselves had lost. Most important, this is the story of a people searching for their noblest selves under the circumstances that had long been feared but never truly imagined. That's the prologue. Once again, this is the book, America, spelled with a K. I don't know if you can find it anymore. I found it a number of years ago on Amazon for like a penny. The shipping was more than the book was. And then, like I've shown you so many times, the miniseries. Good luck trying to find it without paying about $500 or so. But you can watch the entire movie on YouTube. It comes in 13 different segments, and you can watch the entire movie. But like I said, that part there about the EMP, that was in the book. That wasn't in the TV movie series, or miniseries, I should say. It wasn't there. But anyway, just what I read you there. How much of that are we living today? How much of that are we living today? The great gun grab, can it happen? It already has on a small scale. When is groping Joe Biden going to order the big one? Or if they kick his mangy old ass out of office, or his own people pull him down and say, Joe, you can't even keep anything straight. Let's put Heels Up Harris in there. She wants your firearms. How many people in law enforcement are not going to go along with it? And they're going to find themselves on the short end of the stick. They say it could never happen. It already has. And the worst is yet to come. The economy. You got people out there now refusing to work. Absolutely refusing. My wife works at a meatpacking plant. Told me the other day. I found this one just mind-blowing. Just like where I work. You got all these people on the inside of the warehouse always want to call off. So our loads are getting later and later and later behind. Yesterday my load came out 6 hours late. People are expecting these loads. We got customers to service. Idiots in the warehouse keep calling off. So where my wife works at, a guy on the inside, the boss man, told everybody, look, I will give you $200 cash, and all you got to do is show up to work. Show up to work. I will give you $200 cash. Show up. You know what happened? I don't know how many people they got working in there. 14 people called off. $200 cash, free money off the books. And they couldn't even bring themselves to show up to work. I see billboards out here all over. $300 sign-on bonus, $500 sign-on bonus, $1,000 sign-on bonus. Come to work for us. Now sometimes the bigger sign-on bonuses, you might have to work there 6 months or so to get it all. One guy told me a couple of days ago he saw one that said $5,000 sign-on bonus. Of course, you might have to work there, put in a full year's worth of work, and not be calling off every other day to get it. There might be a hitch. You want that money? Show up and do your job. Nah. Unfortunately, we are living in a time where a certain amount of people, they would rather lay on their ass and do nothing but collect freebies. You know, socialism. That's just communist light. You know, everybody lay on your ass and let the government support you. What happens when they decide, okay, you're getting all these freebies, and all of a sudden now the nice guy veil comes off? Okay, all you people getting all these freebies and laying on your ass, now you're going to work for it. What happens when they start sending you to the factory, sending you to the fields? They got all the border jumpers out there working in the fields. What happens when all these, people living generation after generation on welfare? Make them start working the fields, make them work the factories, make them clean up the neighborhoods that they destroyed generation after generation. St. Louis. Parts of St. Louis is just a wasteland, just like Detroit. So many places, once beautiful metropolitan paradise, are now an absolute wasteland. What's going to happen when the nice guy veil comes off And all of a sudden they start loading up all these individuals in the cattle cars, taking them to concentration camps, make them work. You're getting this freebie check for all these years. Now you're going to work for it. You don't think it can happen? People didn't think the great gun grab could happen either. It already has. Food shortage. You don't think it could happen? It already has. The shelves getting cleaned off. That'll never happen. It already has. Last year. It's just a matter of time. What's going to happen when they really pull a fast one and all of a sudden, forcibly or through maybe some little trickery, all the gasoline oil refineries shut down? EMP. No oil production, no gasoline production, gas stations don't run. Trucks don't run, warehouses and stores don't get serviced, everything evaporates in less than 2 days. You don't think it can happen? Mark my words, it can. And that's kind of why I made this video. To show you that book, Descent into Anarchy, The Great Gun Grab in New Orleans. It happened back in 2005. And that movie, America, spelled with a K, and that book, same title. And I read you something in the book they didn't have in the movie. I don't know if you can still find the book. You might be able to. Watch the video on YouTube. But always remember, every time they say it can't happen, be rest assured it can. Because a lot of times, it already has. Anyway, this is Eric the Mind Control Guy. I got to go get some work done. So, anyway, this is my 50 cents for the day. Take care and be prepared.